Channel refers to the modalities by which information is exchanged. For face-to-face and video communication like this, channels include the words and non-verbal cues like tone of voice, facial expressions, gestures and body language. These non-verbal cues enhance understanding by confirming or contradicting what is being said, emotionally qualifying what is being said, or by prioritizing spoken points or substituting for words. The relative importance of these factors was investigated in a widely quoted and misquoted series of experiments on conversational communication by Mehrabian et al. They studied words, tone of voice and non-verbal cues that did not agree with each other. They found that when non-verbal cues or tone of voice did not match the words, then only 7% of conveyed meaning came from the words, 38% from the tone of voice and 55% from non-verbal cues. The results of Mehrabian's experiments show that tone of voice and non-verbal body language add a lot to understanding. The importance of non-verbal cues in communicating emotional aspects of mental models is widely recognized, but they are equally important in rational models. Let's look at an account of a highly rational system. Let me tell you about how this worked in a highly rational system in my own personal experience. Some years ago, I was studying physics with the UK's Open University and took their course in quantum mechanics. The course ran for 9 months in total. The teaching material was textbooks with some audio and video programs. There were tutorial groups meetings every week or two, but I was not able to attend many because of the shifts I was working at the time. I applied myself to the material, but 3 months into the course I was lost. I spent many hours poring over the course modules and looking at other textbooks, television programs and popular science books, but I could not get my head around the basics of the quantum mechanics model. I managed to scrape through the assignments by adapting analogous worked examples, not by real understanding. I thought I was going to fail the exam. 6 months into the course, there was a 1-week summer school, which I attended. The first evening was encouraging in a way. The other students were just as baffled as I was. We met one of the seasoned tutors in the bar that evening and she made us all feel a lot better. Not only did most students arrive at summer school feeling like we did, but they left with solid understanding. She was absolutely right. A week later it all made sense, but looking back, I cannot so easily identify what it was that made it click after so many hours of study had failed. We had good lectures, discussions with tutors, practical experiments and discussions with other students. Something about this somehow got the quantum model into my brain. The relevance of this in understanding communication with restricted channels, or impoverished communication. Face-to-face discussion, tutorials and class teaching have all channels available. They are the best means of communicating complex analytical models. Telephone communication loses visual cues and is poorer than face-to-face discussion, but it retains intonation and tone of voice. Written communication contains only the words. It is therefore the most impoverished and the most difficult to understand, and the easiest to misunderstand. The right channel should be chosen for the right message. If the message is complex or easily misunderstood, or if the consequences of misunderstanding are severe, then face-to-face communication is the best option. Written communication serves a different purpose to spoken communication. In most cases, the two are not easily interchangeable. The strengths of written communication are that it can be referred to as any time after it has been written, it can be skimmed or dipped into rather than read in sequence as required by the reader, it can easily be sent over long distances, and it can be accessed by lots of people. But there is a lack of non-verbal cues and of feedback. This can lead to inefficiencies that are repeated over and over again. We all know of forms that have redundant or missing response boxes that go unchallenged for years. The problem of lack of feedback goes further than this, and good written communication requires a particular effort on the part of the writer to focus on the reader rather than themselves. Common faults are alienating the reader with curt, unjustified directives, stating things that are important to the writer but not the reader, and the use of excessively non-specific and politically correct language to avoid any blame rather than enhancing clarity of communication. These deficiencies of written communication do not affect all messages equally. Mechanistic communication, with its simple, unambiguous facts like dates and times and simple mental models, are little affected. Most affected are complex analytical models and emotional issues. Written communication is good for factual transfer, but bad for conveying understanding of complex issues, addressing concerns and conflict resolution. Telephone communication is somewhere in between, but for these issues, face-to-face communication should be used wherever possible. By computer-mediated communication, we mean person-to-person communication channels such as email, mobile phone, text messaging systems, and instant messengers such as Yahoo and Twitter. These are all convenient but potentially dangerous media. It is very easy to send out a text message or an email you later regret. Once a message is sent, you lose control over who reads it. It can be forwarded to any number of people or stored indefinitely, unknown and inaccessible to you, and later found by powerful search software and taken out of context. Further, these systems are fast, with complete accuracy of message transmission, but we humans are not. For us, across communication, from breaking news stories to military operations to history to interpersonal messaging, more speed means less accuracy. You cannot physically write and post an angry letter in seconds, but through these channels you can. A familiar problem is the volume of text and emails that we all receive, much of it unsolicited. This makes going through an email inbox a tedious and low priority task. Consequently, emails, particularly if unexpected, are liable to be ignored. These media are bad at communicating emotion. That's why we use emoticons. The receiver is likely to interpret emotional content as more negative than intended, either seeing neutrality where positive emotion was intended or negative emotion where neutral was intended. As a consequence, they lead to greater conflict escalation than other communication channels. Experimental evidence shows that decisions made by groups communicating electronically are poorer than those of groups communicating face-to-face. Furthermore, the quality of decisions is worse with electronic media that are text only compared to having an audio or video component, and are worse if they are non-synchronous, like emails, which do not invite an immediate response, rather than if they are synchronous, like instant messaging. This makes email the worst computer-mediated communication medium for group decision-making. You may remember this, or at least recognise it. It's a pen. When they were in widespread use, legibility was a dominant issue, but no matter how often it was addressed, it never seemed to make any difference. One aspect of handwriting that got a lot of attention in healthcare was the scope for medication errors, which was a subject of a US Health Department Sentinel event alert. Recurrent drug errors are often due to unclear handwriting, particularly of numbers and unit symbols. These ones were particularly common. The letter U, used for unit, especially in units of insulin, can look like 0. The Greek letter mu in micrograms can look like M for milli in milligrams. A decimal point with a trailing 0 can be misread, so that 2.0 can look like 20. A decimal point with no zeros in front can be mistaken. For example, 0.2 can look like 2. For site-specific interventions, especially surgical procedures, we should add one more. The lowercase letters L and R can look like each other. As we change to electronic prescribing, another group of errors is emerging. Whether the overall error rate changes and in which direction remains to be seen. There is evidence of reduced error rates, but in other areas such as aviation, over the longer term, an over-dependence on the infallibility of such systems has developed, especially in those with little experience of manual systems. To err is human, but to really foul things up requires a computer, as illustrated by the Stoke-on-Trent radiotherapy mistake.
Between 1982 and 1991, the radiotherapy unit in Stoke-on-Trent in the UK suffered from an error that caused 1,045 cancer patients to receive between 5% and 35% underdosing of radiotherapy. As a consequence, an estimated 492 patients suffered earlier tumour recurrence. And the error arose because prior to 1982, staff applied a correction factor to doses to allow for the attenuation of radiation over the distance between the body surface and the tumour. In 1982, a computer system was introduced that applied this correction automatically, but staff were not aware of this feature of the system, so continued to apply the correction themselves. This resulted in the correction factor being applied twice. The error only came to light when a new computer system was installed in 1991 and a discrepancy between its dosing and previous dosing was recognised. Numerous background threats and errors conspired to cause the disaster.
A final thing to mention is abbreviations. The role of these in adverse events has been extensively documented. Abbreviations like TLAs are poorly standardised and poorly understood. Use them with care and write in plain English unless all relevant readers will unambiguously understand what they mean. Oh, did I mention? TLA stands for three-letter acronym, like NHS for the National Health Service.